In Gen 1 Pokemon, Mewtwo is probably the best Mon out of the box that you could attempt to solo run with. Not only is its stat total literally godly, with the particular highlights being its special attack and speed, it's not lagging behind anything else really. However, Mewtwo has a number of disadvantages when compared to its Gen 1 counterpart. Firstly, it comes right out of the box with Psychic in Gen 1, and all things considered, that's probably the most powerful Psychic attack in the game. In Gen 1, you had no special split, meaning that its high special attack also covered its defenses, and Psychic only had one weakness in Gen 1, Bug. The final thing is that in the older gen, you were given a number of extremely powerful TMs which are now locked behind the game corner in particular. So even without the minimum battles and 1v2 angle, there are a few factors that add difficulty to this run. With that said, Mewtwo still has a clear advantage in the variety of TMs it can learn. It's able to learn pretty much all the most powerful elemental moves in the game, in addition to some other useful moves. The time and method of accessing these TMs is another matter entirely, however. Now, let me quickly gloss over the rules. They're in the description too. Rule number 1 is no items in battle. Held items are fine. Rule number 2 is no catching of wild Pokemon unless it's for HM purposes or a trade. Rule number 3 is no fighting a trainer unless we absolutely have to, i.e. we can't progress the game unless we do. And number 4 is no save states in battle. I usually try not to save between the Elite Four, but for these types of runs I suspend that because it is practically impossible. And that's it, those are the rules. Now to start things off, I'm using a mod created by a guy called Aberesk. I've linked it in the description if you want to try it out for yourself. In short, you patch this into the game so that every battle in which trainer has more than one Pokemon, it'll be turned into a 1v2 double battle, totally ignoring if you have any other Pokemon in your party. However, in doing so, you then can't use the UP randomizer to inject your chosen Pokemon as a starter, which is usually what I do for these types of runs. So what I did was I firstly add Mewtwo to the game with the randomizer, start the game, and then pick Mewtwo instead of Bulbasaur. I then reset a few times until I can get a modest Mewtwo with decent enough IVs. Make no mistake though, this is far from a perfect Mewtwo. And finally, I use a save editor to swap in Mewtwo for Bulbasaur. With that out of the way, the start of the game is pretty trivial. The rival's Charmander is no match for Mewtwo, even with confusion. And by the time we've gone through the early game, we reach Brock at level 6 and have only fought 2 trainers. One being the rival and the other the guy blocking you from getting out of Viridian Forest. The battle with Brock isn't particularly difficult compared to what's to come, but it can be frustrating. His Pokemon are more than double our current level. Geodude's at level 12 and Onix is at level 14. While Geodude doesn't have anything besides Harden and Tackle, the Onix is much better than what it was in the originals. During my first attempt, I was a little unsure who was most deserving of Mewtwo's attention, so I did alternate between the two. But between Onix's Bind and Rock Throw, it wasn't exactly a winning strategy to deliberate. Back at it again, and what we're relying on is, because Confusion doesn't do over half to the Geodude, we need it to both get confused and then hit itself in Confusion. Onix usually goes for Bind, and that's preferable against its other moves, despite the tick damage of 2 HP per round. However, Geodude then gets equipped with Tackle, and I'm expecting the battle is all but over. But it turns out that Onix has Rocks for Brains. My first Confusion on it not only gets the Confusion, but Onix then hits itself in Confusion. While Bind is busy taking off our HP, I go for another Confusion. Onix hits itself again, and even though Bind takes off 2, the battle is pretty much over. We line up another, and we finish Onix off. Our trip through Route 3 and Mount Moon is pretty uneventful aside from choosing Lord Helix, which will forever stay a fossil unfortunately. Upon arriving in Cerulean, with the choice between Misty and the rival, I opt for the latter. Misty isn't going to be an easy battle, given our gulf in levels, and plus Starmie is part Psychic. What does work in our favour for the rival battle is that, along with his annoying Pidgeotto, you've got Abra. And because Abra's only move is Teleport, we do get a little bit of breathing room. Despite the battle effectively being a one-on-one, his Pokemon still out-level us, and Pidgeotto's Sand Attack is as annoying as it ever was. Despite that, we can usually make it past the Pidgeotto, it's just those Sand Attacks are going to catch up with us. While Rattata is never a problem, the Charmander is. Take note that Charmander and what it evolves into is going to consistently be a pain. To go on a slight tangent, why Charmander? Well, it's probably the most attacking focused of the 3 starters. Bulbasaur is obviously weak to Psychic, and Squirtle, while tankier, isn't as dangerous in the attacking department. There's not much of a trick to the battle, however. What determines your victory is taking as few Sand Attacks as possible. In our successful battle, we get a crit with Confusion. At level 14, Rattata is one-shot, leaving us with just Charmander. We use Confusion, doing over half. Charmander gets a burn with Ember, but despite that, it's mostly smooth sailing for the rest of the battle. I still think Misty will curb stomp me, so I choose to head through Nugget Bridge and towards Bill's house. Again, while there are a few mandatory battles, which is always helpful, nothing is putting up much of a challenge, but that's about to change for Misty. Her Staryu isn't much to talk about, it's the Starmie that's the problem. A single confusion can take the Staryu out, however, Starmie's Water Pulse is doing around a fifth, and Starmie has Recover. Because Confusion is doing pretty pathetic damage, the Starmie has no problem healing when it's in range and just rinsing and repeating until we get knocked out. Despite trying it a few more times, there's nothing really for it than to head towards Vermilion. I'm not stupid enough to go and tackle Surge, not that we could if we wanted to anyway, because we don't have Cut or we haven't defeated Misty. We can only avoid every trainer on the SSN and make our way to the rival. A few things have changed for this battle. Namely, instead of Abra coming out with Pidgeotto, it's now Raticate. Due to how annoying Pidgeotto is, I choose to focus on it first. At roughly the same level, Confusion does do good damage and we can knock it out without taking too much damage ourselves. The rival then sends out Kadabra. Knowing Confusion isn't going to do much against it, I switch the focus to Raticate. The plan is that it's better to have something that's not only up against our special defense but our resistance too. While Raticate isn't a one-shot, we do some decent damage and are able to take it out. Gone is the Charmander when the Charmeleon comes out. Instead of finding out how much its Ember does, we luckily get a crit, leaving us with just Kadabra. For the rest of the battle, Mewtwo and Kadabra trade Confusion until the rival takes the L. I'm still not confident about Surge, so we'll go back to Misty. I'm hoping the couple of levels we've gained will make a difference. For Staryu, Confusion remains a one-shot. Water Pulse, however, is still doing around a fifth of our HP. While I entertain trying to disable Starmie's Water Pulse, it's not really the play in the end. It's not too long until things turn in our favour, slightly anyway. We start like before with Staryu. While I do get the disable off on the second turn, it was probably a waste of time, so I end up falling back on Confusion, which isn't putting the Starmie in favourable ranges. Despite Starmie getting off Recover, we do manage to nearly knock it out. Starmie ends up getting confused, then it does our job for us by knocking itself out. Now, we're in a slightly better place to take on Lieutenant Surge. He starts with his Pikachu and Voltorb. By the time we've reached him, we've been in 23 battles and are at level 22, so just out-leveling some of his Pokemon. With the Voltorb being the weakest and having annoying moves like Sonic Boom, we target it first. Pikachu's happy to use Double Team, while Raichu is up next. I'm concerned about its attacks and speed, but we do end up outspeeding it, using Fusion and scoring a crit. However, because of the range, Surge is definitely going to heal, which will drag things out. Raichu uses Thunder Wave, Pikachu uses Double Team again. We then get the Super Potion and are now not outspeeding either of them. We then get Paralyzed. However, it takes a while for either of them to actually attack Mewtwo. While Shockwave does some decent enough damage, we are able to get through the Raichu, leaving just the Pikachu. Now we're stuck in a back and forth with Pikachu, who should go down to 1 Confusion until, yeah, we're KO'd. In the next battle, I learn Confusion is a range on Voltorb, so end up resetting until I'm able to KO it in 1. When I eventually do, Pikachu then uses Thunder Wave and I'm not favouring my chances. I still persevere, focusing on the Raichu works out and I eventually KO it while it doesn't even attack. And the same goes for the Pikachu until we eventually win, taking less than 10 damage. Gen 3 AI has really not caught up yet. So it's rivaling time once again. When we get there, what we get here is a prelude to one of the run's most difficult battles in Silph Co. The rival starts off with Pidgeotto and Execute. While I could have taught Mewtwo Shockwave, I'm still a little cautious with my TM use, given how expensive both literally and figuratively it is to get new TMs. At level 26, Confusion isn't doing enough to one-hit KO the Pidgeot, meaning it can use Sand Attack. Execute's Confusion isn't really doing much, but Pidgeotto does get off an attack before we knock it out. Execute then puts us to sleep, while Gyarados uses Thrash. We then get hit with a Leech Seed, and yeah, we aren't doing it at this level, but there are a few stops we can make in the meantime. In Erika's gym, there are a couple of trainers you have to fight on the way to Erika herself. She starts with a Victory Bell and Tangela. Tangela can't really do much to us, so I go for the Victory Bell first. Thankfully, we can mostly rely on Confusion for the majority of the fight. After attacking Vileplume, it uses Stun Spore on us, and I'm getting Surge flashbacks. As you can see, it's times like this where Gen 1 Mewtwo with Psychic really makes the difference. Either way, we get hit with Giga Drain from both Tangela and Vileplume, putting us on 17 HP. I use Confusion on Vileplume to finish it off. We level up. I'm pretty convinced the battle is over. All it'll take is 1 Giga Drain from Tangela. But Tangela then, for some reason, uses Ingrain. We don't get paralyzed and can use Confusion to end it. And we're saved by bad AI once again. After Erika, I decide to tackle the Rocket Game Corner, where there are just a handful of trainers in your way before you actually face Giovanni. He seems obviously worse than it will be at Silph Co, and when he eventually becomes a gym leader, spoiler, for extra disrespect, I go in without healing. Because his Pokemon are physical attackers, I set up a barrier. Rhyhorn uses Scary Face, a move that will become a giant pain in the near future. Speed and attack are the keys to victory in any sort of run like this. Despite that, Mewtwo's speed is so godly, we're able to go first. We use Confusion on Rhyhorn, which nearly knocks it out. Onix uses Rage, awful move. We get Confusion on Rhyhorn, level up, and then Kangaskhan comes out. Barrier is helping to mitigate a fair bit of damage, however our Confusion is not doing great damage against Kangaskhan, and it has Bite. Onix uses Bind, I go for another Confusion, and I'm hoping Giovanni won't heal. My next Confusion does knock out the Kangaskhan, but we're not doing great in the HP department. Luckily, Onix misses with Rock Throw, and just one Confusion is able to take it out. So now we've done as much as we can and have no choice but to tackle the rival at Lavender. Though we are a few levels above his Pokemon, it's not going to be an easy battle. I've taught Mewtwo Water Pulse in anticipation for the Charmeleon, and went and picked up Psychic from Saffron too. Now we're able to one-shot Pidgeot. Psychic nearly KOs the Gyarados, and then Execute puts us to sleep. I decide to roll with it until Thrash plays out and Gyarados is kind enough to knock itself out. Still asleep, Kadabra then comes out. We've been asleep for so long it feels like Gen 1, but we eventually wake up. We then get confused, which is always great. At 25 HP, we somehow manage to pop off a Psychic and KO Execute. Kadabra then uses Confusion, and we're on 19 HP when Charmeleon is sent out. I immediately go for Water Pulse, and it is a thankful one-shot. Despite all the Kinesis that Kadabra has been using, our next Water Pulse hits and knocks it out. Not easy by any means, and things are only going to get worse because we've got to face the Silph Rival next. When first attempting this, Mewtwo's at level 33, and the rival is out leveling us by a good few levels. For the first attempt, I go with Psychic against the Execute, which does just over half. Pidgeot hits us with Wing Attack, and then Execute uses Stun Spore. Things are not going great. I figured I've lost, but I soldier on until the Gyarados comes out. For now, I attack Pidgeot with Psychic, but Gyarados has Bite and it's doing decent damage. It's not long before Pidgeot gets the last hit in, however. For my next attempt, I get cut down at the same point as before. So it's apparent that the Execute has to go down pretty quickly, and nothing I have right now is cutting it. I go and grab the TM for Aerial Ace, but that ends up being pretty pointless because of Mewtwo's relatively poor attack. In hindsight, I probably should have just done the damage calcs to save me some time. Either way, things aren't going well, so I decide to try my luck in Koga's gym instead. Funnily enough, there's a trainer here with 3 Drowsies and a Kadabra who ended up being a tougher battle than Koga himself. One of the issues with our typing and limited moveset is that we really can't do much against other Psychic Pokemon. At one point, I thought about getting Shadow Ball from the Game Corner, however it's an extremely expensive TM, and we're at a point where money is also extremely tight, and that never gets better. In the end, I'm glad I didn't, because if we had, then I wouldn't have been able to complete the run. But that's for later. With perseverance, we eventually make it past the trainer and to Koga himself, and this battle is more about prioritizing the right Pokemon. While you might think it makes sense to take out the Muck first, it's the Koffings that are the biggest problems. Not only that, Muck is a 2-shot, but about the Koffings, their Sludge not only does decent damage to us, it can poison us too, and it's not long until they can pretty easily defeat us. Next time around, I focus on the Koffings as they come out. Muck's pretty happy to just use Acid Armor, which is pointless, or Minimize, which could become a pain later. Knowing that after the Koffing we have Wheezing, I'm more confident that Psychic will one-shot it because its special defense is a lot poorer than Muck's. Taking it out in one means we don't get self-destruct either. So when it's just us and Muck, I still go for Water Pulse first to get it out of healing range, then just focus on Psychic until it's down. However, that's as far as we can go. There are no more mandatory battles to tackle. We have to fight the Silph Co rival now, and things still aren't looking great. We're at level 35, I've still kept Aerial Ace for some reason. Even though it does over half to Execute, it's still kind of pointless because it'll always follow with Stun Spore. Even then, Aerial Ace can still be a range. I switch back to Psychic, Execute hits us with Poison Powder, we defeat it, and Gyarados comes out. Between Pidgeot's attacks and moves like Bite and Dragon Rage from Gyarados, we really can't afford to not be one-shotting these Pokemon. Shadow Ball had been floating around in my head, and at the time I was convinced it was the key to unlocking the battle, but I forgot that Execute is Grass, so Shadow Ball would be pretty pointless. Even if I was saving it for the Kadabra, it was still a giant waste of money. However, that's what save files are for, and thankfully I reverted before I screwed the entire run. In a revised strat, instead of picking up Shadow Ball, I get Flamethrower instead, the only fire move I currently have access to. We're now able to one-shot the Execute. When Gyarados comes out, I go for Psychic, but it's only doing a little over half. Again, we need to be one-shotting stuff here. Pidgeot uses Wing Attack, Gyarados uses Dragon Rage, and we're at 47 HP. I use Psychic on Gyarados, and then Charizard comes out. I use Water Pulse, and it just does over half. Not great. Charizard uses Flamethrower, and we are toast. Despite managing to get to Charizard a few more times, it's just too powerful, and it's always knocking us out. I finally relent once again and teach Mewtwo Shockwave instead of Barrier. Now not only is Execute a one-shot, but so is Gyarados with Shockwave. However, when Charizard comes out and uses Flamethrower, it does around 64 damage to us, combined with Pidgeot's Wing Attack, and we're knocked out again. The secret ingredient to victory is Rare Candy, specifically 3 of them to take us to level 38. Now when we try again, Execute and Gyarados are dealt with in much the same way. Then, when Charizard comes out, instead of using Flamethrower, it uses Scary Face. Again, not a great move to get hit with when it hits, but it misses, and I'm guessing it chose that because its Flamethrower wouldn't KO us. With that bit of luck, we're able to KO the Charizard, leaving only Pidgeot and Alakazam. Still, I'm at 59 HP, so things aren't looking great. Shockwave is thankfully a one-shot on Pidgeot, meanwhile Alakazam is busy using Calm Mind. I use Psychic, hoping for the special drop, which I don't get. Alakazam then uses Future Sight, another Psychic, and I'm really hoping Alakazam doesn't attack. It goes one worse and uses Recover. I then attack, Alakazam then misses, but then comes the Future Sight. We're left on 13 HP. I go for one last Psychic and it finally goes down. And that's the Rival done with. I make sure to save because I'm not doing that again. Giovanni is a welcome change of pace though. We can leave the Nidorino alone while we focus on the Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan leads with Fake Out, and in a 1v1 battle, it's not really an issue, but it's pretty smart in a double battle. Nidorino really only has Horn Attack, which isn't too great, however. Thankfully, Psychic is doing a fair chunk of damage, and despite getting hit by Mega Punch, we make it through at around half HP. When Rhydon comes out, I can use Water Pulse, while Nidorino thinks Helping Hand is the right play. After leveling up, Giovanni's final Pokemon is the Nidoqueen, and now we can simply sweep the remaining 2 Pokemon with Psychic, a lot less hassle than the Rival. Sabrina's up next, and you may think that because of a Psychic Pokemon we should be set. Our problem is that all our moves are special, and it becomes clear in the first few exploratory battles that if we allow the likes of Kadabra and Alakazam to keep using Calm Mind, we're barely going to scratch them. Then, because of their increased special, along with Alakazam's Recover, we're not going to get as far as these things stand. At this point, I make a decision that has a rippling effect across the rest of the run. I replace Water Pulse with Strength. We'll see the results of that decision pretty soon too. Now when we go back into battle, despite our less than optimal physical stat, we're still able to one-shot Kadabra with Strength. I'm also mindful that Mr. Mime has Reflect, so after it luckily uses Calm Mind, I hit it with Strength. While not a one-hit KO, we are able to take it out in the next turn, leaving us with just the Venomoth and Alakazam. While I could target the Venomoth and knock it out, Alakazam's the bigger threat, and I'm able to keep using Strength to knock it out. Along with leveling up, Flamethrower is more than enough to knock out Venomoth. Now Blaine is where we run into another roadblock. Remember Water Pulse from before? That would have been pretty useful against a Fire-type gym leader, right? If only Passme had remembered that. Well, things do not go well. While Psychic is able to OHKO the Ponyta, each of Blaine's Pokemon have Fire Blast, giving me a flashback of Flannery's Pokemon in Emerald. So despite being able to knock the Pokemon out consistently, we just can't be taking that much damage from Fire Blast. Even though I get pretty close early on, being left with just the Rapidash, there's no way we're going to get that kind of look consistently. The first strat I attempt is to teach Mewtwo Rain Dance, which you can pick up on Route 15. While this does a decent job of mitigating the damage from Fire Blast, by getting hit twice each round, setting up anything is a hazard. Not to mention when Arcanine comes out, Psychic is not a one-hit KO and it has Bite. Despite trying the battle multiple times, not being able to make the ranges on our attacks is ultimately what's killing us. So gotta think some more. The only other move in my arsenal that might help is the TM I got from Sabrina, Calm Mind. With this, while we waste turns, we're effectively gaining both offense and defense. In the first few battles of trying this strat, I quickly find out that one Calm Mind is not enough to effectively KO the Arcanine, and I did the calcs. I needed 2 Calm Minds. What I also found out was that if I still had Water Pulse, then I would have just needed 1 Calm Mind. The only avenue I have left is grabbing a few more rare candies and taking my level from 41 to 43, because that's the level I can get away with using just one Calm Mind. As I've been doing, it's the first move I use. Meanwhile, Growlithe and Ponyta will use Fire Blast, and you just have to hope they miss at some point. However, neither do, and we're on 97 HP after the first turn. I then use Psychic on the Growlithe, and the Arcanine comes out, while Ponyta uses Fire Blast to take us down to 68 HP. Moment of truth. I use Psychic on Arcanine, and we get the range. Another Fire Blast from Ponyta, and we're on 38 HP. We do outspeed the Rapidash and use Psychic. It goes down. Ponyta then uses Stomp, which is pathetic. I'm guessing because it could have run out of Fire Blast if I wasn't counting. This means we can then use Psychic and win the battle. Now we have the final gym leader, Giovanni. After him, we just have 6 battles remaining and we're done. Up until Giovanni, we've only been in 60 battles, and after him, there are no more mandatory trainers left. The battle with him is pretty trivial. It's more about picking the right Pokemon than anything else. Out of the Dugtrio and the Rhyhorn, I decided to focus on Dugtrio. By this time, we're level 45 and have learned the invaluable Recover ability. After Dugtrio goes down, we can then take out the Nidoqueen, then the Nidoking. And despite Rhyhorn using Scary Face, there's nothing much to worry about as we blast through the rest of Giovanni's Pokemon. Another rival battle and another pain in my ass. He leads with Pidgeot and Rhyhorn. While Rhyhorn is not a particular problem, it does have the Lightning Rod ability, which basically nullifies electrical attacks, and I ended up learning that the hard way. Despite being level 46, Psychic is still not a one-shot, and in my first battle I wasn't aware of Rhyhorn's ability, so I was just there spamming Shockwave and wondering why it wasn't working. Despite quite regularly making it past the Rhyhorn, Pidgeot and Gyarados, we run into problems once again with Charizard and Execute, and I was really expecting that thing to have evolved by now, but it's back to its old tricks of using Stun Spore or Sleep Powder. Even in the instance we do get past it, Charizard is just too powerful an opponent to take down, so we're out of luck. After multiple failed attempts, it's becoming pretty clear that there are a number of things standing in our way. Number 1 is Pidgeot is not a one-shot with either Shockwave or Psychic. Number 2 is we have to focus on the Execute first, and number 3 is Charizard is still hella powerful. Even though we have moves like Recover, it's not as useful as you think in a double battle because we're just taking the brunt of the damage. With 2 Pokemon ganging up on you, it easily just mitigates any kind of healing advantage you're looking for. So to firstly deal with the Pidgeot issue, you can go to the power plant, and at the power plant you can find Thunder. I specifically chose not to get Thunderbolt because that requires coins for the game corner and I need enough for a backup plan strat later if something doesn't work out. We'll just have to live with the lowered accuracy. There are 2 parts to the Thunder strat. Firstly is obviously dealing with Rhyhorn. The second is when Gyarados comes out, we want to bait it enough so that it eventually uses Rain Dance on its turn. This means not only will Thunder ignore accuracy checks, it'll also weaken the power of Charizard's Flamethrower. However, in the instance we actually make it to Charizard, I discovered that Thunder is a range. But eventually things turn in our favour. We always target Rhyhorn with Psychic first and it goes down. Now for some reason instead of Gyarados we get the Execute. We still have Flamethrower for that. Then we eventually get the Gyarados. I decide to go for Thunder because why not? It misses and we take some decent damage. At 42 health I'm forced to go for Recover and I can keep healing until I see Gyarados use Rain Dance. Then I go for the Thunder. Charizard comes out. Pidgeot hits us with a critical wing attack, which takes us down to 88 HP. I use Thunder on Charizard and it turns out to be a range, thank God. I'm now at 60 HP and we still have the Pidgeot and Alakazam left. I play it pretty stupidly and go for a Thunder on Alakazam, which puts it in red bar but doesn't finish it off. Alakazam goes for Disable and misses. Pidgeot goes for another wing attack and I really have to heal now. Alakazam then uses Future Sight, it doesn't have Recover anymore. This means I can use Flamethrower and it's down. Now at level 47 I can take my time and recover before finally using Thunder to win. Now is perhaps our biggest challenge so far in the Elite Four. Money is still extremely tight and even now I don't have enough to buy coins from the game corner for my break glass in case of emergency strat. I did pick up a few more rare candies, but as always I'll give it a try at my current level first to see how much of a bad time we're in for. Going in, we're still rolling with Psychic, Flamethrower, Thunder and Recover. In theory, Thunder should be enough for Lorelei. Psychic should deal with both Bruno and Agatha, and Blizzard, which I got from the Pokemon Mansion, should be enough for Lance. Obviously, things did not work out that way. Fully enough, Lorelei was close to being one of the biggest roadblocks so far. At level 47, Thunder will one-shot the Cloister, however, Even though our special defense is better than our physical defense, you can see Dugong's Surf racking up the damage, and we haven't even gotten to Lapras. Not only is Thunder not a one-shot because it's so bulky, Lapras gets a freeze in the very first battle. So I go back at it again, still take out the Cloyster first. Despite using Psychic on Lapras, it barely does anything and they retaliate pretty devastatingly. Much like in the rival battle, it's not something we can even attempt to heal out of. And oh yeah, I then discover that Thunder is a range on the Cloyster. And even in the situations where Lapras and Dugong don't double team me, Lapras likes to use Confuse Ray too. Even when I make it to Slowbro and manage to defeat it, you have Jinx come out and use moves like Lovely Kiss and Ice Punch, which just ends up slapping us silly. Pretty clear we're not making it so far. The only play left is to use the rare candies I have. Now at level 53, I'm hoping our ranges won't be as big as a problem. I switch things up by targeting Dugong first, because Cloyster is pretty happy to sit there and spam Protect. Then when Lapras comes out, we use Thunder and discover it's still a range. We then get confused, but manage to pop off a Psychic and defeat Lapras. When Slowbro comes out, my best move is still Thunder, and there's no way it's bulkier than Lapras. Now the Jinx issue. Our best move is Flamethrower, but it's a range. Even though we get lucky this time, by eventually being able to KO it, that doesn't bode well for the future. Lastly, we can just use Psychic on Cloyster and it's an easy one shot. All that and we just got past Lorelei. Thankfully, we can catch a break with Bruno. To make this 100% consistent, all you have to do is save the first Onix until last. Bruno will send out his fighting Pokemon, which are all a one-shot to Psychic. Onix will generally be quite helpful and use Earthquake, which aside from doing not a lot to us, will help with any ranges for his other Pokemon. It's perhaps one of the easiest battles I've had in the game. Even the Machamp, who I was a little concerned about, is no problem at all. Agatha, however, can be a problem. She sends out her Gengar and Golbat first. Gengar is a Pokemon we can't have stick around because of Hypnosis. Even though Golbat has Bite and Confuse Ray, it's still not as big of a priority as her other Pokemon. Much like before, we can use Psychic for all of her Pokemon. We take out the Arbok, despite being confused. We level up and ignore Safeguard. We then outspeed our high level Gengar and take it out, leaving us with just Golbat and Haunter. Again, all we need is to just use Psychic 2 more times to win. And while that battle looked easy, I soon found out I got pretty lucky. At level 55, we're now ready to take on Lance. I finally teach Mewtwo Blizzard instead of Flamethrower, and we can see how our luck holds up. Lance starts the battle with Gyarados and Dragonair. Obviously, the Gyarados has to be our main target first. We first miss with Thunder, but then manage to get it off the second time. Next up, Lance brings out Aerodactyl. Surprisingly, we do manage to outspeed it too. But we have no choice but to heal that turn. Dragonair's still using Outrage. Aerodactyl then uses Hyper Beam, and I have to eventually heal again. When I finally attack, I go for Thunder and we get the hit. Lance's level 60 Dragonite is up next. The only thing that has a chance of KOing it is Blizzard, and we miss. However, even though we use Recover, Dragonite is really doing a fair bit of damage. I try Blizzard again and it knocks Dragonite out. We level to 56, and then there's another Dragonair, but this one has Thunder Wave, which I'd forgotten about. Paralysis combined with a low accuracy move like Blizzard is really what's stopping us from taking the win in the end, and we're eventually knocked out. A couple of more retries tell me the exact same thing, so I think it's time for a change. However, trying to get back to Lance again is no easy thing. Because the battle with Lorelei is down to luck and making ranges, I'm having to retry battling her like a dozen times before I make it through to Bruno. I'm either getting confused or frozen or taking chip damage from hail. I just can't seem to make it through with any consistency. There's very little I can actually control against her, but that doesn't mean there's nothing that I can do. The range against the Jinx will never be a KO with Flamethrower. The only move that I have that can guarantee that is Fire Blast despite its lower accuracy. But the issue is you're running on a 70% accuracy roll, and you need to make that 3 to 4 times in a row kind of. Because you need to use Thunder on Dugong, then you have to soften up Lapras before using Thunder again, then again on the Slowbro, and then you use Fire Blast on the Jinx. Getting all those to line up perfectly is pretty rare. Even when you do make it past Lorelei, I was getting stuck with Agatha. While the very first time I got lucky with Golbat and Confusion, other times I didn't. While you could go Gengar and then switch to Golbat, you're giving Arbok the chance to poison you, which means you won't last the battle. So to get through Agatha, you're still relying on a portion of luck, though not as heavily as you were with Lorelei. Eventually, after trying things again and again, I knew if I was attempting to make this a clean run, I'd be here for hours and hours. So I did make the decision to save. Now, if I can't get through the rest of the Elite Four and the Rival, the run is basically over. the levels and moves that I have will have to be enough to carry me through the rest of the game. And what's kind of an added frustration for FireRed is things like held items and berries aren't really too well integrated into the game. Berries aren't really accessible until you get far into the main story. For held items, you need the item finder for a majority of them. That would be useful, and to get that, you have to catch like 30 Pokemon, which I couldn't be bothered doing. A number of the other held items are, as you might guess, held by Pokemon, and Mewtwo can't learn Thief. Because this is a solo run, I can't use other Pokemon outside of using HMs. But anyway, I decide to save between Elite Four members. I go through Lorelei and Bruno before saving in front of Agatha. After defeating her, I then go for Lance and hope I can win. I spent a good chunk of time going through the map and getting every single item that I could feasibly sell until I had enough money to go to the game corner again. For some perspective, you need around 80,000 coins per decent TM. I've so far purchased 2 of these, and that's all I can afford. And they were Flamethrower, and now for Lance, Ice Beam. Because Blizzard, even though it's powerful, is just not accurate enough to breed any kind of consistency. Now Lance. Now we have Thunder, and we still need it to hit Gyarados on the first turn. When it does and Aerodactyl comes out, we need to get that Thunder hit in again. When that both happens, we're now on 160 HP for Dragonite. We use Ice Beam, it's a one-shot. Then we have to focus on the second Dragonair because we can't get paralyzed. With that out of the way, we're left with just one Pokemon and it's easily taken care of. Now that is how much of a difference Ice Beam makes. And if I'd gone with Shadow Ball before, there's no way I'd have been able to complete this without even more luck. So with Lance done, we're ready for the final battle of the game. Unlike before, while the rival keeps his Pidgeot first, he sends out Alakazam instead. The first go round doesn't go too well, and I'm glad I saved between this, because getting through all that just to get wiped would not have been fun. 2 Ice Beams are enough for Alakazam, but then Gyarados comes out, and those sand attacks we were getting means we're eventually knocked out. The next battle, I start with Ice Beam on Pidgeot, Alakazam uses Psychic, which we can handle, but we need to hit with Thunder on the Gyarados. We do and it goes down. Next is what's been our nemesis for most of the run. We use Ice Beam on Charizard and we do get a clutch freeze. What I should have done is focused on taking out Charizard instead of worrying about Alakazam, because when it eventually unthaws, despite taking out Rhydon, Charizard uses Fire Blast and we are toast. Our biggest focus right now is making sure we can deal with the Charizard, because again and again it just deals too much damage for us to recover our way out of. What's also annoying is that Thunder is still a range on the Charizard. Like 95% of the time this thing should have been getting KO'd, but it still manages to hang on until we finally get a break. As usual, we start off with Ice Beam on Pidgeot, then we just use Thunder on Gyarados, we can't afford to miss. Alakazam is meanwhile using Psychic and chipping away at our health. While I do miss the first Thunder against Charizard, Charizard then misses with its Fire Blast. When I connect with the next attack, it's within a decent range and finally KOs it in 1. Rhyhorn comes out and I have to heal a couple of times before eventually going for Ice Beam. Alakazam uses Reflect for some reason, fine with me. Execute is finally all grown up and is now Exeggutor. It uses Sleep Powder and we get lucky because it misses, allowing us to Ice Beam it for a 1-hit KO, leaving us with just Alakazam. I make sure I've healed enough before laying on the Ice Beams until we can defeat both it and the rival, beating the game. Well, now we're done. At the start of that run, I'd expected Mewtwo to have absolutely no problems demolishing every single Pokemon that got in our way, and in a way, I was kind of surprised it wasn't as easy as I thought. While it wasn't as hard as the Emerald run with Kyogre, Kyogre did have some more advantages. You had better moves available in both its learn set and out in the world. For Mewtwo, its learn set wasn't too great and TMs are really hard to come by. It's one of the first runs where I had to be so tight with money. And in the end, beating the rival took us to 67 battles for, probably the lowest number out of any of the challenges I've done so far. But maybe you had a better plan to deal with some of those battles, feel free to let me know, and I've also included a list of all the trainers I've fought and their locations in the description if you're interested, along with the mod if you want to try it out yourself. If you have an idea for an interesting run in the same style, let me know, and if you want to like or subscribe, then go for it. Until next time, have a good one.